Okay, I'm going to start. Thank you all for being here. I am so happy that we can welcome my friend Slava Vakarchuk to Toronto, who, as you see, has made a kind of heroic effort to race here right from the airport. And should not worry about not being dressed up because it's like a Friday afternoon and we're all very casual. So I suspect that many of you already know who Slava is, but I'm going to give him a bit of an introduction anyway. So Slava is, in very short form, a Ukrainian rock star. There does seem to be a piano right there. He can also jump very high. He gave my kids bouncing lessons when they were small. He's very aerobic on the stage, but he's also a civic activist and has been for a very long time, and has been somebody who has been periodically involved in Ukrainian politics, and maybe more importantly than politics, and especially for the past years, since the full-scale invasion, in attempts to do everything he can to support the people of his country at a very dire moment. So Slava has been from the very beginning traveling everywhere, going to the front, playing concerts in bomb shelters, playing concerts for soldiers, visiting wounded children in hospitals, giving charity fundraising tours to raise money for the Ukrainian war effort and for humanitarian efforts. So he's been, besides being a rock star, he's been very socially, politically, and civically engaged. I should also add that Slava was trained as a physicist, still mostly in Soviet times. He has a PhD in physics. But since then, he has also taken two, let's call them sabbaticals, from being a rock star, and studied at both Yale and Stanford. And studied things
is it a blasphemy, like to be at both?
No, on the contrary. Like I did my BA at Stanford, then I did my PhD at Stanford, and then I taught at Yale. No, you jump around universities all the time. And Slava can talk about various things he studied, but I know there was a class on Athenian democracy, public policy, democratic transformation. So he's somebody who, besides being a rock star and a civic activist, has really spent a lot of time doing very serious thinking, about what civil society means, what democracy means, what a civic nation means, and a lot of these big kind of political existential questions. I know Slava so well because he spent a semester at Yale as part of the World Fellows Program 10 years ago, where I would say he was probably the most enthusiastic student at Yale who started off the semester going to some 23 classes. He read Hannah Arendt. All my students who talked about Hannah Arendt with me this morning can also ask Slava about Hannah Arendt. What I'm going to mostly, I'll just ask him a few questions because I want to give all of you a chance to ask questions. But one of the reasons I really wanted to do this talk with Slava here is because, in addition to somebody who really deeply knows and loves his own country, and sees it, I think, in a very sober way, as well. He's also extremely unpretentious, and he will tell you honestly about the experiences he's had, and the insights he has, about his own society and about this war and about Russia. I will maybe just start with an anecdote. So my daughter Talia and I talked to Slava. You called us on, it must have been February 19th. It was the Saturday before the full-scale invasion. I know everybody knows what happened on February 24th. I always say February 24th, 2022, because it was Ukraine time, it was February 24th, but here, and where I was in New Haven, it was in fact February 23rd, and we were not asleep. It was 9 o'clock in the evening, and we were entirely all too awake. But in any case, the Saturday before, Slava called from Kiev, and it was the 19th, and of course everybody knew that the Russian army was lined up on this border. This was not a secret. Everybody was waiting nervously and trying to figure out what was going to happen. And I said, Slava, like, how does it feel in Kiev? Like, what's the atmosphere? And he said, well, imagine what it must have felt like to be in Miami in October 1962 during the missile crisis. And then imagine what it must have felt like to be in Central Europe in the summer of 1939 between the Munich conference and the invasion of Poland. It's something like a synthesis of those two moments, which I thought was quite a brilliant answer, and of course also tragic, because this was that what happened next was not what we were hoping would happen next. So maybe I will start by asking you to talk about that moment on February 24th when the thing everyone feared most actually happened. And you maintained, you were very clear-eyed. Like, you didn't panic, you immediately kind of jumped into action. You weren't paralyzed. You didn't just sit in a room and cry, which I might have done. So maybe you can talk about how, like, what that moment meant for you and how you responded.
First of all, thank you very much for having me here. It's a great honor and pleasure for me to be here. Also, Toronto is my special city because that was the first place outside Ukraine, by that time outside the Soviet Union, where I've been to. We traveled here. I was as a high school kid, being 15 years old. So I came here for almost 2 months, month and a half. I spent time in Ukrainian Canadian family, a family of Ukrainian descendants, and that was my first encounter with the West in a general way of this word. So I always feel nostalgic here, even now coming here from the airport. I can vividly remember some things, some concrete places I've been to. So it's always fun and some nostalgic, very moving feeling to be here. So it's number one. Number two, in your introduction, you slightly exaggerated my age, because I wasn't trained as a physicist in the Soviet times. When the Soviet Union collapsed, I was 16 years old, so I just finished my school. But I do remember as a kid what it was to be in the Soviet Union, although in the last part of it, but still, it was quite an experience. And the last but not the least, I want to say that I am really seriously involved in many things happening in my country. One thing I'm not involved anymore, and I don't think I have any intentions to be involved in politics. So that's just for everyone to understand the things. So don't treat me as an acting politician or the one who wants to be a politician. I am a rock star. I'm a musician. I'm a civic activist. Okay, that's fine for me. But also, more importantly, I'm a friend of this wonderful family, Marci and Tim, who I had a chance to meet just in Ukraine before we left. I hope I'll meet him too during my stay here. But now I will answer all the questions, and I will start from answering your question, Marci. I wasn't panicking because of many reasons, but most importantly, I think that to control your fear was something that I've been learning through the whole of my life, because I'm not the kind of hero person. There are some people who have a very high threshold of fear, so they are fearless. And sometimes, if you're fearless, you also are careless. And I'm a normal person. I freak out. I'm scared of many things. but also I learn how to control your fear, because I don't believe that that to be fearless is a normal thing. It's an abnormal to have no fear. But what is also an extreme thing is to be controlled by your fears. So what you have to do, not only in the situation like that, but in every situation we have, is to be aware of your fear, to process it, and to kind of live through it, and not let control fear, not let fear control yourself, but instead control your fear. So I think I was scared, like everyone else. I just tried to maintain calm and focused on, you know, things I need to do. The 2 days before the full invasion started, I had this gut feeling that things are going to be worse. Don't ask me why, it's just gut feeling, you know. I have a lot of gut feelings in my life. I can write songs about some certain events that happened 20 years later, and I don't know how I do that. Yeah, so I just felt something would happen, and I called my friends, my band members, to do some to do some action, and so we went. We were all in Kiev. Many people already panicked, and they were trying to leave the city and country, and many friends of mine as well. But I say, okay, first we need to show people that we are there and we are with them. So we went to the center of the city. We have this pedestrian bridge, like there in the middle of the city, and a glass one, you know, made of glass. And we took guitar and we just started singing songs. It was meant to make to be a YouTube video, just a short clip or like Instagram clip, just to post it there. And we didn't tell anyone, so it was not announced. We only told maybe a couple of our friends, and maybe one or two journalists knew about that. It's not that we kind of leaked that. No, it's just we didn't make a secret, but we didn't want to make a public event. It was more like, you know, okay, we're gonna do that like 12 p.m. we decided, and then 2 p.m. was the scheduled time. By the time we arrived there at 2 p.m., there was probably 2,000 people, including probably 50 or 60 cameramen from all over the world, CNN, CBC, CBS, you name it, NHK, you know, like whoever. I never gave interviews to NHK before, but that was my first, not the last time, unfortunately. Yeah, and that showed me I was, you know, really surprised, not to say, I mean, more than surprised, flabbergasted, a good word in English, like wow, and that showed me, that gave me a sign that not only me, but everyone feels something. It was a moment, it was a flash mob of, you know, of unity, you know. So people showed up because they wanted to be together. They understood that Slava and the guys are gonna sing, but we need to be there. And we are quite a famous music name, but we didn't advertise it. So imagine, like in 2 hours, 2,000 people showed up. I mean, it's like I still by this day, till this day, I don't know how did they know. I mean, someone, you know, told 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, and so we performed these songs, and I felt, and it helped me, you know. After this performance, I felt much more strong and much more focused and much less scared than before. So it was not only a group therapy lesson for people, but also for me. And we got 1 million views on YouTube and Facebook like that. I can tell you in Ukraine, it's quite a big deal. For our, you know, music commercial videos, it takes it takes a lot of work to achieve that kind of views. But then like, you know, people wanted to be together, and they wanted to be present, either literally or at least virtually. So that helped me. And by the time that the invasion occurred, I was kind of mentally ready. So I think 2 days before, I embraced the fact that it probably would be inevitable, and it was not like was waiting. We were undertaking different steps, including immediately after. I don't think you knew that, even Ukrainians. Immediately after that successful acoustic performance there, which actually lasted for 20 minutes or so, we scheduled immediately the same kind of event in Mariupol 2 days after. So that means on the 24th of February. We actually bought tickets for a plane to Dnipro, and we arranged cars and everything, because like it takes you 2 hours from Dnipro airport to Mariupol. So we wanted to do exactly the same event on like in a waterfront, you know, somewhere like they have like a promenade in the waterfront. And at least they used to have. I don't have any like idea what's there now, unfortunately. But I used to have, and yeah, and I remember the moment. I remember very, very vividly every probably hour of the day before and that very first day. So I went to bed like around 1 a.m. and I didn't have a good sleep, and then 3 or 4 a.m. in the morning I woke up. Still it was quiet, and like I didn't know what to do. And for some reason I turned on my, you know, all of us are hooked to our phones and our, you know, news on the phone. So I saw the UN Security Council there was a meeting with them, and I started watching it online, and I saw it was a total Kafkian, you know, kind of thing, when Russians were just brainwashing everyone with like completely, you know, kind of nonsense things. And then I remember out of the blue it was stopped, and the breaking news were that the Putin was like having, you know, like an address to nation, like 4 a.m. in the morning. And when he didn't start a word, I understood everything. And it was like in a movie. You can actually make a movie from all of these you know, reminiscences. So it took him 5 minutes to say something. That I've heard, like, you know, big explosions right to me, and there's a big. I'm living outside the city, and not far away is the military airfield. Yeah, and it was bombed, and that's how So I remember I just stood up from my couch, where it was like a sofa or something. I wasn't in my bed. I was like so I made 3 or 4 calls, which I had to make, my family calls, and then I just brushed my teeth, took my things, and started doing. First, I helped some people to leave the city, and then I came back, and everything else, you know, it was very well televised. Yeah. So I don't remember any kind of fear. You know, when some bad things happen, inevitable things happen, which were so much, you know, anticipated, it becomes easier for you to some extent, because there's nothing more exhausting than to wait it's a very exhausting thing to anticipate, to wait for something that you're not sure is happening or not, especially bad things like war. And when finally the first explosion occurred, I felt like, okay, now there is no time for philosophy anymore, for thinking. For now, it's just time for action. And yeah, first couple of days it was like 48/7, I would say, or probably 72/7 work. Yeah, I don't remember even if I slept, because it was like, if you slept like probably 1 or 2 hours. I was working like a chauffeur. I was working like a load worker. I was working like whoever, like psychologist, whatever. I did everything except singing. That's these first days. And yeah, one day, not only me, but I think one day millions of Ukrainians can write memories on that one day only for each of them. But then, like overnight, you come back to this vicious circle of Russian history that it comes over and over and over again, and it comes to this unpredictable tyranny and craziness and everything. And I was asked many times, what do you feel like about all these people who are fighting against you, listening to our music? And I always say, I don't care. I only divide people on good people and bad people. I'm absolutely in admiration of all Ukrainian soldiers who fight today for Ukraine. Some of them probably hate Okean Elzy, and I still love them, even probably more, because I think these are real heroes. And the same thing, I don't care if our enemies listen to or used to listen to Okean Elzy. I even don't want to process this fact. I don't care. They are my enemies, and they will be, because they come to kill my people and to take my land. So I will never make any excuses or make any differences. So that's the period,
That last concert in Russia.
Fancy war here.
The last concert in Russia, the concert na chemodanas, the concert on the suitcases, I think it's still on YouTube, and so you can pull it up and see both how incredibly beloved that band was, and how all of these Russians knew the lyrics in Ukrainian. And after the full-scale invasion, in the initial few weeks, you made a couple videos appealing to Russians, to not do this, to stop doing this, to make some kind of intervention. And these are heartbreaking, like the wrenching videos. And then you were visiting wounded children at the front, and then you wrote that poem about hatred. Where did it come from, my hatred? Which is also kind of heartbreaking poem, and my friend Krzysztof Czyżewski translated it into Polish in a beautiful Polish translation. I didn't feel like I could translate into English because hatred is feminine, and you degender it in English, and I felt like it wouldn't work without the gender. But it struck me because Slava is just not a person who I think of as having a lot of hatred. I think of you as somebody who's incredibly generous to people, and when you see him come out on stage, like when we saw you at Madison Square Garden, what struck me is that you walk out on that stage with such extraordinary love. Really a lot for all of these people who are, throwing you flowers and stuffed animals, and that feeling that hatred was new, and that it was something you didn't know what to do with. Where did that come from? And that was one of the moments in the full-scale invasion that really got me. I thought something has happened now that can never be undone.
It's a very good remark, observation. Every person in the world contains a lot of different feelings, and probably sooner or later everyone comes through hatred, want it or not. But I always felt like I never hated anyone. You know, I had different relationship with different people. There were serious clashes. There are some people I don't really want to be with, or you can say you don't really like. But it's not to like someone and to hate someone is completely different thing. And yeah, and I was angry on Russians that they inserted this feeling in my heart, which was inevitable. But hatred, the problem or the irony of this, hatred is a necessary weapon of war. You cannot survive without having it, because it helps you to separate firmly from your enemy, because you have to be separated from your enemy emotionally, otherwise you'll be killed, you know. And this is kind of ironic, and it gives me creeps to say that, but that's a necessary tool. And I hope when the war is over, this feeling will go, but sooner or later, but not today. And I can't even think about it. And once again, it's even, you know, everyone hates Putin, or, you know, like personalized people, but it's more than that. It's like impersonated, you know, kind of thing. Then it's just a feeling, you know, of everything, of this barbarism, you know, of this you know, absolutely outdated, barbaric 12th century things happening next to you, actually not next to you, but with you here now. And it's kind of the fact that it's happening in like now here in the 21st century exaggerates it, like to fully, yeah. And but you also need to understand that you have to deal with this, and one of the things you still need to keep your mind clear and sound, and that's what I'm trying to do every day. And you know, because at the end of the day, you win the war not only with your emotions, though emotions are very important, but also with your actions, which usually have to be very clear, calculated, and calm. If I may use the word calm. That's what famous British poster said: keep calm and carry on. That's what we have to do. That's a slogan for me now. Keep calm and carry on. That's actually how I've been living since the war started. I'm trying to keep calm and I'm trying to carry on. That's it. Very simple. Okay, thank you.
So it's now.
Grazie mille.
It's now. I mean, it's now been 3.5 years that this has been going on. How has this changed you, and how has this changed your understanding of the country, and how have you seen Ukraine change?
First of all, I think war galvanizes extreme features and extreme, you know, traits of people. And I see how most Ukrainian people, I think war made us better people. I think war made us, all of us, better. It definitely didn't make us feel better. I think that's quite the opposite. But I think it kind of made us, if I may use this word, forgive me if this word is probably too controversial, but I would say it made us cleaner. I probably can't, I don't know how to express it in English in a subtle way, but that's the word I want to use, like cleaner, more up to the point, and all, you know, impurities, all kind of not necessary things, they they went away, you know, and people kind of concentrated on what's the most important for them: their families, the lives of their lives, lives of their beloved, some camaraderie through, you know, like with, you know, with even absolutely unknown people. This sense of camaraderie, you know, which you felt, especially the first days, everywhere, in gas stations, in, you know, shelters, in refugee centers, in the centers of, in the trenches, everywhere. This sense of camaraderie is amazing, and I think and hope it will stay even after the war. I'm kind of talking all this, like always using this expression after the war, so I don't want you to be mistaken that I'm like so relaxed that the war is over. No, I know that it's a long path still to go, but I'm just saying that I hope that one day when the war is over, we still keep this kind of camaraderie and this goodness inside of us. Yes, that's true that some people, in some people, they kind of there are some like other things, more like worse things became candid, you know, and you know, it's always like that. But I think that if I may use mathematical or arithmetical expressions like percentage, but percentage of these good things, I think, is overwhelmingly bigger than this of these bad things. At least that's my feeling, my understanding, and my experience. That's not wishful thinking. That's something that I see, and I think that certainly this is the most important change I see in Ukrainians. But also, we became another thing that war does. It grows you up, and we became more mature. It makes you more mature as a nation. I think there were a lot of illusions, some of these very naive, some of them romantic, some of these just childish or more scientific word, infantile. I think we got rid of many of these, and that's a good thing, because the nation has to grow up. And the mature nation doesn't mean an old nation, because thankfully, not like people, nations can exist for centuries or millennia, and I think we have a long and successful way to go for Ukrainians, and it's a good thing when you become more mature, more aware of difficulties, you get more muscles, more scares, more wrinkles, more everything that makes you mature. But once again, in the nation's case, it will make you stronger for a longer time. Yeah, and so I think that's another good thing that happened. People now understand more. Maybe another very important thing is that Ukrainian armed forces became a symbol of pride. It was not 100% the case before, for different reasons, and I think our enemies quietly were working on that too. But that's inevitable fact. Ukrainian armed forces are if I say, a foundation of the nation now, you know, and it's also just because the best people are there, not only because And I'm not talking only about volunteers who showed up first months, you know, which are, I think, the bravest people I've ever met, and the most, the others, on the other hand, the most mature and responsible people I've ever met, but also those who got conscripted later and who probably had different, you know, second thoughts on that. But once there, they presented to this reality, they mostly become, you know, the better versions of themselves. And it's such a great thing. And I'm talking about that, and I feel like, you know, my eyes get wet because that's, I see a lot of them. I go to the let's say, being correct, next to the front line, not on the same, next to the front line. I go on a frequent basis, and I know what I'm talking about. I've seen thousands of them, maybe hundreds of thousands now. Yeah, and it's unbelievable feeling to be next to these people. So that's why also I go there always, and I sing for them, and I will do that how much is needed, because that's something that not only helps them, I hope, but also makes me more confident and gives me, you know, kind of special in moments that keep me going later.
Okay, we don't want to keep you too long because you have to save your voice for singing tomorrow.
No, that's not a big deal. It's not a rock concert tomorrow, by the way, so it's like a very intimate, a kind of frontline concerts, but also play piano. Imagine playing for the troops, but with the piano. Yeah, so it's okay, don't worry about that.
Well, let me in any case open up for questions from the audience. Oh, I'm sorry? Oh, we have cards. Wait, do we have cards?
Ah.
Oh, people have cards. Oh, okay, yeah, so please then.
Yeah, is it like a silent auction, so people shy to show up? Yeah, because sometimes you want to know, hi, I'm Mary, and I dare asking you this question, or maybe vice versa. In the Soviet times, they did this, because no one wanted to show up and say, that's me who is asking this question. But I'm fine. I mean, whatever. If someone wants to stand up, great. If someone wants to write a card, great. I'm like open for both. So should we start from these, and then maybe people will raise up their hand? So should we start from these?
Well, let's somebody has their hand raised at the back.
Yeah.
So let's. Yes. Why don't you? I don't know anybody here, but why don't you stand up and introduce yourself? And
Russians, what they did. My question is because, like I said, I'm Russian from Soviet Union, and I grew up in Ukrainian hatred kind of atmosphere. Okay, for example, my grandfather finished the war in 1950 in the street. You know the street, right? As an NKVD commander, he was killing Ukrainian people to liberate Ukraine, right? So, but after this genocide, I think it's absolutely important that that the Russians, every Russian has to apologize for genocide, and Russia as a state has to apologize and accept this as genocide. And only after that, the Ukrainian probably can say, okay, sure, we can really maybe build another relationship. Will ever Ukrainians forgive them? And but sorry, as a Russian, I would like to apologize for you for the Ukrainian for genocide and.
Thank you for your question and for everything you said. I'm not the one who has right to fully answer this question. It's the question for every Ukrainian, and for every heart, and for every mother who lost their sons or daughters, for every bombed house and everything. So it's such a hard question that I even don't want to theorize on that. I definitely think we will never forget. Hundreds of thousands of years, we will never forget. And I don't want to talk about forgiveness now. That's not the time and place to talk about forgiveness when Russian troops are still on our ground and still killing our people. So I even don't want to discuss this thing.
Okay, let me read. Has the war brought more rapprochement between Eastern and Western?
More what?
More rapprochement, conciliation.
Okay.
More coming together between Eastern and Western Ukrainian social and political thoughts, and what impediments do you see to national unity across the different parts of Ukraine?
Thank you very much. First of all, I believe that this so-called division in views of Ukrainians in the East and the West was artificially orchestrated and imposed by Russia since the very beginning, and probably even before the Ukrainian independence. It was a deliberate politics and deliberate policy that made it was a typical KGB version of Roman Empire rule, divide et conquer, and they just made it extremely cynical and disgusting, I would say. So partly this so-called this notion of kind of division between Ukrainians in the East and the West, I would say mostly it's exaggerated and it doesn't exist. But in things that it does exist, I think it's more and more becomes like Ukraine becomes more and more homogeneous country, because nothing makes you feel closer to each other than the fact that both of your houses in Lviv or in Kharkiv being shelled by Russian missiles, believe me. So you don't need any specific thing after that. These people understand each other more than anyone in the world. Yeah, and that's the fact, and you can't deny it. In fact, Putin and Russians with their rhetorics to liberate, people of eastern and southern Ukraine did the opposite for ages, for generations. Unfortunately, the price is very high, but they achieved quite the opposite they wanted. And I think that this East-West question is not an issue for Ukraine anymore. That's my personal feeling. Politically, I think there probably could be some, kind of divisions, which are everywhere in every nation. But I don't think that this so-called geographic, how you call it, cultural, logical, or a question will be quite a serious issue anymore. I don't see any signs of that now in Ukraine. Impediments. There are a lot of impediments. War is hard and very exhausting, and people get fatigued, people get tired, people get frustrated. We are all human beings, and as the Bible says, a human is weak, and we all have our weaknesses. We all have our, level of resilience, level of strength, so it definitely it definitely makes people this 3.5 years of war make people tired, and when you're tired, especially psychologically, there are a lot of vulnerabilities. You become vulnerable to many things, and I really hope that that as I told you, that because we matured as a nation, these vulnerabilities will not be crucial, in our next developments, because there are some things that we have to be aware of. Yeah, imagine some people to be for months in a difficult situation when they don't see their own families, when they're separated. Or imagine if you don't sleep well for weeks sometimes, like in places like Kiev or Western Ukraine, it comes for days, but then there may be sometimes days of relief. But in the East, they've been shelled and bombed constantly, every day, every night. And by the way, in Kiev, it becomes tougher too, because like what they do now, it's probably they send more drones every week, and we have to cope with this, and we have to find the remedy for that, and we are on the way. And I think Ukrainian army becomes stronger and more experienced every day. But you still have everything has limits. One thing that that doesn't have limits is our desire to stand against the tyranny. And I think Ukrainians are. I'm proud of being Ukrainian, because I think as for a person for whom freedom, personal freedom and freedom of choice is a basic value, understand that most of your compatriots share this value. It's like unbelievable feeling. You feel like in a family then, and I think that doesn't have limits. So Russians will fail.
Okay, this is a somewhat delicate question about language, and I'm going to give a little explanation in the beginning for my students who are here who are not Ukrainian and might not have their minds in the topic to begin with. So Slava's from Lviv originally, in eastern Ukraine, I'm sorry, western Ukraine. And his native language is Ukrainian, but his Russian is very fluent. And Ukraine has long been de facto a bilingual, if not a multilingual country. As a very kind of crude generalization, as you go west, Ukrainian is stronger. As you go east, Russian is stronger. But generally, people were able to switch back and forth. Slava is, as you heard, Okean Elzy performs in Ukrainian. Slava writes songs in Ukrainian. He's like one of the most beautiful lyricists in Ukrainian. But you had never refused to speak to anyone in Russian. I mean, you had never, when I watched 10 years ago, interviews with you in different places, you were always accommodating whatever language anybody else felt like speaking. And of course, this language question has become much, much more delicate now that the Russians have decided they need to start slaughtering people in order to protect the Russian speakers. So that's just a little introduction to the language question for the non-Ukrainians here who might not have had their minds in it. Okay, so recently there have been several Ukrainian documentary films about the war on the front lines. The majority of these films are showing Ukrainian soldiers who are still speaking in Russian. What do you think about this? And what do you think must happen for our people, presumably this is a question from Ukrainian, from our people to understand that our language is Ukrainian?
Thank you for this question. Yeah, this question is complicated, but not from one point of view, but it's easy from the other point of view. I remember one journalist, I think it was from one of the Baltic countries, I don't remember one, at the beginning of the war, approached me for the interview, and she asked me about talking in Russian, and when I said it's better for me to speak English, says, but you must know Russian. And I say, I knew Russian and I spoke fluently. Then in 2014, I started slowly to forget it, and then on the 24th of 2022, I forgot it completely. Language is the weapon, and today to switch into Ukrainian is to be rational. It's not a question of culture only, and I would say it's not preliminary question of culture, it's the question of war. I would say to some extent is treated as a military question, because Russian language makes Russian plans easier to implement in Ukraine. Let's put it this way. To stop them from their plans, you have to use the question of language too. So the language is a barrier, and it makes it much more difficult for them to implement their pervasive soft power in which they were so good in so many years. And it will not stop it completely, but it will make it much more difficult. And that's why I think we have to be very clever in this policy. What I mean, I do understand that many older people whose mother tongue was Russian, for them it's quite challenging, or quite a challenge to switch into Ukrainian. But that's a challenge and a sort of inconvenience, and maybe for some of them pain, is nothing in comparison to what Ukrainian soldiers are feeling when fighting against Russians. So treat it as your contribution to the victory, and just make this inconvenience. Yeah, I understand it's not easy peasy. You know, you have to let's say, it's challenging. Well, yeah, it's a good word, but you have to do it because that's a right and wise thing to do in order to stop the war earlier. It's also a wise thing to make your children from the very beginning switch into Ukrainian, because, you know, Russians occupy not only land with tanks, but also they occupy brains with, you know, with so-called soft power. I don't even want to call it soft power in that case, because it's such a soft power is, for me, is a good expression, and something that's you know when we all know that Ministry of Culture, their Ministry of Culture is a branch of FSB, you know, and that's so obvious, and also it's also such a pity, because people should use culture, including language, to bring love. That's what I feel. And it's such a frustrating and disappointing feeling when someone is using deliberately, specifically, language, culture, poetry, music, whatever, to suffer, to make other people suffer. And that's so obvious for me. And but yes, you can't. The problem is you can't force. You can make people. You have to make people understand, and that's why I'm doing my best to say it every day and to show people. You know, in my circle, there were many people who switched into Ukrainian overnight. All of them actually, and some of them it was difficult for them, but all of them did it. And I'm proud of them. I mean, it was challenging, but they accepted this challenge because they knew the stakes and they did it. So that's not a question of culture today. That's a question of winning the war. That's how I feel it.
Okay, let's take a follow-up question.
Thank you very much. May I add to that, because there is someone in the audience who reminded me of one more thing I wanted to say regarding this, like, you know, culture of things and Russian, let's say Russian politics, the Russian elite or government deliberately have chosen the policy of not recognizing the very existence of Ukrainian nation. It's part of their imperialistic, you know, approach. So if you can say, like, for example, you know, there are some times when former metropolies treat other nations inferior to their own nation, but they recognize that there's a different people there. They just like, you know, worse than us. We want to separate ourselves. There was one extremum in the world, as we know, to that, but that's a different thing. Yeah, these are us and these are you, and you're worse. That's a disgusting thing that you have to oppose by every mean, but at least you understand that someone treats you as a, like, you know, separate sovereign entity. Russians, in their political philosophy, don't give Ukrainians the right to exist. They say there is no nation like Ukrainians, and they say it openly, especially after the war started. So there's only two ways to use to solve this question for them: either to make sure that all Ukrainians become Russians, or make sure that all Ukrainians you continue the sentence. And we want to be who we are. That's what we're fighting for.
So this is a follow-up question. How will the war end, and what needs to happen to bring about Ukrainian victory?
I'm not going to answer this question. I don't want to be, I mean, yeah, maybe someone wants to, but I don't think there is a person in the world who knows the answer to this question. Some people, special analysts, it's their job, and they earn their living on that. They kind of give predictions and talk about that, and there are smart people. They know a lot of things. I don't know enough to even start answering this question. I frankly don't think that anyone else in the world knows the answer, but I definitely don't know. I only know that there is a trivial but true historical, you know, evidence that every war in the world one day ends at some point. But some wars, like, you know, last for a very long time. I just wish the whole world understands the importance of this war and of what Ukrainians are doing for those people who cherish the values of free world. I know, and I'm aware of the fact that the world has changed dramatically in the course of last generation, and it made much more complicated all the things. I'm aware of that fact. I'm not going to make a deep dive into that now, because it's a completely different story. And once again, I'm not positioned to give you answers on that. I just think that all of us who cherish these values of freedom and democracy, no matter where we live, are we Ukrainians, or are we Canadians, or are we Americans, or are we whoever we are, we have to work and sometimes to fight for these values. They don't come for granted. The Western world has been living in a relatively idyllical, I don't want to say idyllical directly, but relatively idyllical world for probably 70 years, when the previous generations of people in Western Europe, Northern America, Australia, New Zealand, other democratic countries were, you know, living in a normal society with a lot of difficulties, but normal societies which knew that democracy and free speech and you know, free elections and all basic things are natural. In fact, they are not natural. You need to fight for them, because you can see a lot of other concepts that conquer with this concept. And if we really cherish these values, we have to fight for them. Sometimes as Ukrainians with weapons, sometimes if it's not that far, if it didn't go that far, with more, with more human means. But still, you have to fight. The worst thing we can do is to abstain and to watch, like people watching the news. Everyone has to do something. That's my feeling.
Does anyone want to stand up and ask a question in person or before I? There's
Yeah, please.
Okay.
The recorder won't pick up.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay, yeah, I hope I'm loud enough. So, hi, I just want to, your words about people switching, from Russia into Ukraine, it came to me like the idea that, like Russians came to kill Ukrainians just to stop, this nation. And it's ironically that, instead of killing it, many just Ukrainians suddenly realized that, yeah, we are Ukrainians, and even there are more of Ukrainians, they have awakened, and something else. And still, I just got one more question for you. I'm really interested in it. So I also was in Ukraine when this, like the full-scale invasion started. And I clearly remember that, all people were just devastated and were just crying for help. Like, NATO close the sky, America do this and that. But instead we had like a lot of words like, okay, like don't push this or don't escalate, or you can't use our weapon to strike on like Russian territory. And it looks like, it appeared that Ukraine is the only country that is not scared of Russia, but the rest of the world is. So what do you think about that?
Look, we are now stepping into this murky world of world geopolitics. So I'm not gonna, once again, make a deep dive into that. I just want to say part of the reason why that is happening is that Ukraine has no other choice. And for us, this question of existence is inevitable now, and we need to answer this question and solve this problem now. And we don't have time for words. We don't have time for diplomacy, because Russians chosen the war as an extension of diplomacy, but different methods, as the famous saying says, and we don't have any other choice. So maybe some other, politicians in different countries, maybe they feel a little bit more safe, or they feel that they are saving some time by not taking, bold actions. I cannot judge them. I cannot. And I don't have enough information. I also am not walking in their shoes. So it's very difficult for me to preach or to teach other nations how they need to act. The one thing I'm very sure that if in the worst case scenario, Russia prevails, that will be just the beginning. And I'm absolutely sure. And I hope people in the world understand that too, and it's better that politicians all over the world understand that too, because it's still not too late. And once again, I don't wanna. So to make it clear, I don't wanna, draw doom and gloom, pictures that everything is so bad. And look, there was a strong and still a very strong unity around Ukraine, and Ukrainian case united a lot of nations, including European nations and the United States and Canada. In fact, we're so grateful to everything that's been done from the very beginning by like many nations in the world, both politically and economically and military and even humanly, socially. Look, there are a lot of difficult moments between Ukraine and Poland, but no one can oppose the fact that Poles and people in Poland did so many things for Ukraine, and they helped so many people, and and I can tell the same about every nation. Canada, like, you remember that it was the first nation who recognized Ukraine in independence, and since then they've done so many things. I met yesterday, the day before yesterday, I met people in Calgary, and Ukrainians in Calgary, and all of them say, we feel so welcome here. We feel that people really support us. We feel, and they were so grateful. So once again, on behalf of all Ukrainians, let me say how grateful I am and all Ukrainians to Canadian people for your support. The only thing that we want to add is just please carry on, keep calm and carry on. I think that sometimes we tend to draw things or to depict things in a black and white manner. Thankfully, the world is not black and white at 100%. There are some black and white things like enemy or friend, but generally, the world is much more complicated, unfortunately or fortunately. And we just need to look, if I'm talking we, there are many we's. We as Ukrainians is one thing, we as those who cherish, democratic values, another thing, we as the whole, mankind is the third thing. Dare say that I'm a member of these three entities, and so there are different tasks. For the Ukrainians, the most important task is now to stop Russians and to survive as a nation, and then the next task will be to persevere and to achieve some kind of this momentum that can keep us going for many years. Some people, sometimes people ask me, what is my dream of Ukraine? And I always say, I don't have like a specific dream. It's a little bit childish, once again, to have a picture of a dream of ideal society or whatever. I'm no Aldous Huxley to make all these things, I'm not a utopian guy. I just want my country to be a normal European country, just to live and let others live, to be happy, to make families raising their children, to people to achieve their goals, to to feed their ambitions, as always, and just to live peacefully. But for that, unfortunately, we have to do our homework, which now is not only dirty, but also bloody. And we have to do that. There's no other choice.
Okay, I'm going to take one more question from you, and then I'll combine a few questions in one last one.
To combine the questions of language and perhaps music, you had two albums out last year, one in Ukrainian, one in English. Is there an interesting story of how you came about writing an album in English, and what was that like?
Thank you. At least one question of something. I was waiting for this question. It's like comes as a relief for me, because I mean I know Marci. I know who she is. I know she is a social scientist, and I knew what would be the questions, but somewhere deep inside I had I had still my wishful thinking was okay, we will talk a little bit on music and everything. Yeah, because look, I'm happy to answer all these questions because they are important, and I understand that, and I'm trying to do my best to answer them. But I don't want to be, once again, deeply involved into political things, and because that's something that also is not part of me anymore. But somehow the question of language and English language is related to what we were talking before. First of all, I was raised, and me and my band members, we all were raised on Western music, mostly British and American rock music of the 60s and 70s, and then the grunge music. I even have I was wearing my T-shirt which says Pearl Jam Seattle, but then I want to say, okay, as a former politician, I decided to be a diplomat and in Toronto just to wear a neutral one. Yeah, so we were raised and in this kind of Western musical rock and roll culture, not only rock and roll but mostly Western culture. I was very little influence of all Soviet and post-Soviet thing on me, on us. Okean Elzy always was a sort of band, Ukrainian in essence and Western in form, and still are. And so when the war started, we just felt like maybe we have to spread a word about Ukraine as loud and as understandable as possible. So we decided to make this album. We think it was a great, great idea, experiment. We still have a lot of, there is, can I use the word aftermath? It's more like consequences, the good consequences which are following us every day. We're gonna continue. It's a difficult road because you have to be aware that no one's going to like you just because you are from Ukraine. If you want just to be internationally, recognized, you have to do something that, resonates with a lot of people who has nothing to do with Ukrainian or Eastern European culture. We accept this challenge. I actually love what we did. My favorite song is called Love on Fire, and I think it's one of the best songs I've ever written in my life. It's not my solo song. I mean, not only me, a great producer and author, Paul O'Duffy from England, from London. We did it together, and I just think this is one of the best songs I've ever written, so I'm proud of it.
I'm going to combine a few of these questions in one last question, kind of following up from that because there's a musical element. So what today makes you hopeful, and how do you write beautiful music in dark times?
It's also a very good question. I probably already annoyed many people who know me because I keep repeating the same story. You certainly know by heart, most of you, about memories of Viktor Frankl, who was a survivor of a Holocaust. He said that first cohort of people who gave up was those who thought that it would never end. Then the next ones were those who thought that it would end very soon, and those who managed to survive mostly were not thinking about this at all. So they were living under conditions of everyday routine discipline and just kept going. So that's what I'm basically doing. I'm living not because of a goal. For me, the goal is less important than paths. But by saying that, I'm not saying that I don't have goals. I have a lot of goals and I have a lot of dreams, but I keep focusing on the paths, like just, on the road. You're on the road, you're focusing on what you're doing now. This power of now, not my expression, there was some famous book, Power of Now. I just borrowed it gently. Yeah, this power of now philosophy resonates with me very well, and especially now when the level of uncertainty is unprecedented, and in this level of uncertainty, in my opinion, the one rational way to behave is not to focus on goals, but focus on the paths, on the way of what you do. So I'm focusing on just enjoying of writing music. I'm focusing on helping people of my country. I'm focusing on going to the front line without asking myself when will be the last. I mean, I don't care. I can go how long it needed, focusing on, raising my children, sometimes, unfortunately, mostly remotely, but still, you can be father if you want, but whatever it takes you. And yeah, by the way, I've just got a video of my son Ivan. So yesterday, I was so proud. So unfortunately, I didn't witness it, but at least I see it now. So it was his first day. He rode a real two-wheel bicycle. Yeah, and so I'm so happy. Yeah, and yeah, I'm a little bit envious that I wasn't the person who made, taught him to do it. Yeah. But I'm still I'm happy he made it. Yeah, now, yeah, Solomia is to follow, I hope. And yeah, so these simple but important things keep me going, and I think that's my recipe. But my recipe for me, and my humble advice for others, I don't have recipe for others. Everyone should have their own recipes. It's my humble advice. Just think about that. Don't ask yourself when the war is going to be over. Just ask yourself, what have you done today, and what are you going to do tomorrow to make it over, I don't want to sound like someone who speaks with political slogans. It's just the way I'm trying to express things. I'm trying to share with you what I feel. This is it.
Can you sing something right now? Last minute solo, no instrument, no piano.
No. I don't know if it's gonna sound well, but let's do it. Let's make it from scratch, or maybe even this. Maybe the mic should be turned down a little bit. I'm not sure. I'm no engineer here, but. Коли настане день, закінчиться війна, там загубив себе, побачив аж до дна. Обійми мене, обійми мене, обійми, так лагідно і не пускай. Обійми мене, обійми мене, обійми, твоя весна прийде нехай. І от моя душа складає зброю вниз, де вже роки вона так хоче теплих сліз. Обійми мене, обійми мене, обійми, так лагідно і не пускай. Обійми мене, обійми мене, обійми, твоя весна прийде Nechai. And the rest is coming tomorrow. Thank you very much. Thank you. Дякую. Thank you very much. Actually, we should have started from this. It could break the ice from the very beginning. I know there was no ice, but anyway, yeah. So then, thank you very much for having me here once again. Thank you, Marci, for making it happen. She was very persuasive, yeah, and in fact, you know, in fact, I'll share a little bit like secret, not like a secret, but a strange thing that's happening. When we start this tour is tours like this is really exhausting, physically exhausting, because you have long flights, you have a lot of sound checks and everything, and the schedule is tight. So usually at the very beginning, I say like, okay, I'm not gonna do any additional speeches. I'm not gonna do any meetings because, like, I can't bear everything. But then little by little, like first, like Marci say, I mean, it would be very important if you speak in Toronto. Okay, you do that. Then, Rory Finn, he wants me to speak somewhere next to Chicago. So I was like I only confirmed it yesterday because I saw the gap. Then they want me to speak to someone at Harvard University, and then finally Dora wants to speak me in New York, and I ended up from the point I do nothing. I ended up doing already 4 of them. And I say so probably I'm really very soft person, or maybe I just feel like doing that because I think it's a right and important thing to do. So please remember about Ukraine, keep supporting Ukraine, keep calm, carry on. Slava Ukraini.